Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson, and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast aimed at intermediate to advanced level English learners. How expensive is the city you live in? Recently, the Economist Intelligence Unit has released its ranking of the most expensive cities in the world. This episode will look at the results of this ranking, as well as talk about some of the trends in price increases or decreases and the reasons behind these trends. But first, why not follow the Thinking in English Instagram? Thinking in English podcast, or the link is in the description. It's full of great vocabulary content, and you definitely should look at our blog, thinkinginenglish.blog, for all transcripts and bonus content. Here is our vocabulary list. As always, the written list is available in the description of the podcast and also on our blog, thinkinginenglish.blog. To rank. To rank. To have a position higher or lower than others, or to be considered to have such a position. For example, she ranked the bottles in order of size along the shelf. Inexpensive. Inexpensive. Not costing a lot of money. For example, that is an inexpensive perfume. To drop. To drop. To move to a lower level, or to cause something to move to a lower level. For example, we had to drop our prices because of the recession. Habit. Habit. A habit is something that you do often and regularly, sometimes without knowing that you are doing it. For example, members of the public were asked about their shopping habits. To embrace. To embrace. If you embrace something, you accept it enthusiastically. For example, he embraced the opportunity. Vice. Vice. A vice is a moral fault or weakness in someone's character. For example, my one real vice is chocolate. To cope. To cope. To deal successfully with a difficult situation. For example, it must be really hard to cope with 3 young children and a job. And finally, to plummet. To plummet. If something plummets, it falls very quickly and suddenly. For example, house prices have plummeted in recent months. What do the French capital Paris, the Swiss city Zurich, and Hong Kong have in common? Well, at first glance, not too much. While Zurich and Paris are both European major cities, Hong Kong is culturally, geographically, and linguistically different. However, there is one thing that they have in common. They are all expensive cities in which to live. In fact, they are not just expensive cities, they are actually the most expensive cities. They are tied for number 1 place in the Economist Intelligence Unit's most recent worldwide cost of living report. This report ranks the most expensive cities in the entire world. By comparing the prices of nearly 140 products and services in 133 cities around the world, the Worldwide Cost of Living report allows organizations and companies to adjust salaries for employees around the world. People who work in expensive cities need more money to live compared to people who work in inexpensive cities. For example, a worker in London requires more money than a worker in Budapest or Prague, because it is more expensive to live in Western Europe, and especially in England, than it is to live in Eastern Europe. So what kind of things does the report compare? Well, it generally sticks to the bare essentials, including food, clothes, recreation, utilities, and rent. These are things that wherever you live, you probably need. So, of course, this ranking doesn't particularly focus on luxury items, such as fine dining or wristwatches. Instead, it's just sticking to those bare essentials. So I decided to check how much it actually costs to live in one of these cities. According to the website costof.live, which is a website which breaks down the cost of living in different cities, Zurich's average cost of living is $3,771 a month, most of which is for rent. Food is also particularly expensive in Zurich. Alongside Paris, Hong Kong, and Zurich, Singapore, Osaka in Japan, Tel Aviv in Israel, New York, Geneva, also in Switzerland, Los Angeles, and Copenhagen in Denmark complete the 2020 top 10. You might notice that the majority of these cities are in Western Europe, with only one city from the Middle East and two from Asia. The report found that cities in the Americas, Africa, and Eastern Europe were less expensive than last year, while cities in Western Europe became more expensive. The survey also ranks the cities with the lowest cost of living. Damascus in Syria has the lowest overall cost of living, while Tashkent in Uzbekistan and Lusaka in Zambia are also in the bottom 3. Compared to the cities in the top 10, these cities struggle with economic problems as well as political instability. This survey not only ranks the cost of living, but also provides information on the changes in average prices across the cities over the last year. The cost of personal care products, tobacco, alcohol, domestic help, transport, and groceries have all increased over the last year around the globe. However, the biggest overall increase has been felt in the cost of recreation. Recreation includes things like the prices of eating at a restaurant, books, and electronics. On the other hand, the price of clothing has dropped significantly in the same period. Why are these changes in prices interesting? Well, they reflect the impact of coronavirus on our spending habits and the prices of goods. For instance, the changing nature of work is clearly responsible for a number of these price increases. With more people working from home, the price of laptops and computers has shot up by 18.7% on average since 2019. People need laptops and people need computers to continue working, and often they are forced to buy them themselves or upgrade their work computers for their home computers. People have also embraced popular vices to cope with the pandemic. Both alcohol and tobacco have increased in price. These products are often used by people as a way of coping with stress and boredom. Meanwhile, with non-essential stores shut during lockdowns, sales of clothing and footwear plummeted, sending prices down with them. With less opportunity to go out and wear nice clothing, many of us felt no need to expand our wardrobes. And with most of our work life, and social life now being done online, there is really no need to be wearing nice dresses or expensive shoes. Instead, we can just wear a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. According to the authors of the report, The pandemic also caused Singapore to be overtaken by Paris and Hong Kong. Singapore dropped because the coronavirus pandemic caused foreign workers to leave the city, which led to less demand in the economy and a weaker local currency. So it is clear that the cost of living around the world has been deeply impacted by coronavirus. Here is today's final thought. How expensive is your city? Has the cost of living increased or decreased over the last 12 months? Has the pandemic impacted this cost where you are? In my opinion, the impact of coronavirus on the costs of certain everyday items is incredibly interesting. In the early days of the pandemic, essential items including hand sanitizer, toilet roll, and medical masks were in great demand, which caused prices to increase. However, as the supply increased, the prices decreased. And now hand sanitizer, toilet roll, and medical masks have largely returned to their normal market prices. As gyms were closed across the UK, home exercise equipment also rose in price. I remember back in July and August searching for a kettlebell, which is a type of exercise equipment, but not being able to find any anywhere. Almost every shop had sold out. And any of the second-hand kettlebells that I could find online, on Facebook, or on eBay were incredibly expensive. Furthermore, outside of major cities, house prices have also tended to rise. As people work more from home, there is less need for people to live in the center of expensive cities. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Thinking in English. Please share with your friends, check out our social media links in the description, and send us a message. We really appreciate all of your feedback. And if you have any ideas for topics or future podcast guests or any other learning format, please let us know. And please leave me a rating. We're now on Instagram. I'm sure you've already seen it, but go there, check it out. Lots of good content about vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. And Instagram is a great way to contact me. It's Thinking in English Podcast on Instagram, or the link is in the description. Also, all of the transcripts of the podcast are now available on the Thinking in English blog. Vocabulary list, comprehension questions, and all of the articles are there for you to read. That link is also in the description, so please check it out too. Thank you, and see you next time.